Welcome to Soundtrack Your Life, a podcast about soundtracks, music, and movies. Each episode features a guest and focuses on a specific soundtrack and the personal stories connected to it. Now here's your host, Ryan Pack.
Hello, I am Ryan Pack. Thanks for listening to the podcast. This is Soundtrack Your Life, where we talk about soundtracks that have personally impacted us. Today, my guest is my friend Christian Durrett. He is the Associate Creative Director at the Mighty Roar Agency based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And today we're going to talk about the 2006 animated film, Open Season. Hey, Christian, how's it going?
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
So, Christian, first question. Why are we talking about Open Season today?
Well, I think we're talking about this because you obviously have a soundtrack show, and this is the only full-on soundtrack I can think of that our much admired friend in virtual reality, Paul Westerberg, has completed. He's had a lot of famous soundtrack songs from like singles and like the Friends soundtrack, but it's always been like one or two songs. He did like Nowhere Man for, I'm totally blanking out on the movie.
Did you do I Am Sam, right?
I Am Sam. I could, I could visualize the movie, but I could not think of it. But yeah, it's like his only soundtrack. Full-on soundtrack, I guess, except for his Come Feel Me Tremble soundtrack, which was really just a Paul Westerberg album. But we both love Paul, and thanks for inviting me to talk about this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming on. So I think what's also interesting about Paul Westerberg doing this album is it's a children's film.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't see it. Did you see it?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I have seen it with my boys, and like watching a lot of movies with kids, you don't necessarily make it all the way through. I kind of feel like we saw Open Season 2, maybe more than we saw Open Season, but I do remember basically seeing it. But it's been a few years. I thought I might get them to watch it before discussing the soundtrack, but they're going to watch what they're interested in, and I don't think they were going to rewatch something they saw 2 years ago. So technically, yes, I have seen it. I do remember some of the songs in the movie, but I think there's like an orchestral score they added at the last minute. I feel like the music's really not in the actual movie very much. Have you seen snippets or?
I have seen 0% of the movie.
No,
I just bought the soundtrack.
Yeah. So do you plan to watch Open Season with your daughter?
Before I started researching it, my answer would have been, no, hard stop, like absolutely not. But, I think after looking at who's involved with the film, like Sony actually brought on some pretty impressive people to do the movie. Yeah, Roger Allers was co-director of The Lion King, and then his co-director on this film, Jill Colton. She had a stint at Pixar, and then she is the first female director of like a major motion cartoon.
Oh.
Nice. And then the guy that scored the movie, who did all the orchestral stuff, Ramin Djawadi. This was like his first. This was the first film that he did by himself, and now he is known for scoring Game of Thrones.
Oh wow! It kind of started, I guess, because Paul was in LA, like trying to shop around. This is literally the words. We were out peddling songs from the Fokker to film companies. to see if we could place a tune. So he was out in LA, which is weird because I'm like trying to think of what on folk or could be on a movie soundtrack anywhere. And so he met with this woman, Leah, say this woman. She was basically the soundtrack director. So she was pretty high up executive in Hollywood. And so he met with her last. And I guess she was the one that, I don't know if she was a fan or what. She obviously knew he was. And she was the one who brought up Open Season as could be a Paul Westerberg soundtrack. Yeah. And then it says she was joking that she'd send me a nice romantic comedy next. I could do it in a month or something. So he was approached by someone who obviously was aware of his songwriting prowess, and it just happened to be a little kids movie. And the songs on here, they're kind of like, they do kind of remind me of like some of the Friends soundtrack songs, which are like great songs. They're just catchy. There's like substance behind them, but they're light and catchy. And it's not like a deep Paul Westerberg vibe, but they're still really good songs. Like, and there's some like adult things going on in the songs where you're like, how did this get into like a cartoon movie about bears? I think it's just Paul's like, I hate the word cleverness. His wordplay is great. As always. And there's always been like an element of wordplay to like everything the Replacements have ever done. And I just thought it was kind of appropriate. He was doing a kid soundtrack because some of his wordplay verges on what I call a dad joke. Like, and I mean that in a not a derogatory way. Like, obviously the Right to Arm Bears is like, I mean, I feel like it's so bad it's good,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like Waitress in the Sky. It's so bad it's good. Probably one of my favorite lines is the beginning of Better Than This, where he says, I'm a knight in shining armchair.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's like so Replacements. Like, that could have, I mean, the whole vibe, it's like man without ties, don't dress for dinner. It's just like, in a way, Paul was like, before Cobain like invented slackerism, or not really Cobain, but Malcolmus maybe. Like, he kind of invented the, the single guy, like kind of half-assing his way through life. So that was just one of my favorite lyrics off the whole soundtrack. And like, this is a kid's album, like basically talking about a guy who just sits on his ass, in his armchair, trying to figure out what to do with his life. So that's just one of the ways where it's like, yeah, it's a soundtrack, but it's also still very much a Paul Westerberg vibe to, or philosophy, I guess you would say. 7 out of 10 tracks are actually Paul, but I think he wrote 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10. Do you know?
He did not write. Well, there's a Talking Heads song in there, which he obviously didn't write.
There's a Talking Heads track, so of course he didn't write that. But that's
and
like
then,
I Want to Lose Control song, which is not.
Yeah, he didn't write I Want to Lose Control, but he did write Wild as I Wanna Be.
Yeah. And have you heard the non-Death Ray version, the Paul version?
I did not get to that.
Yeah, well, it's on YouTube, so it's better than the cover.
Yeah, I didn't know who Death Ray was. I was like, why? Who is this band, and why is Paul writing songs for them? And
I looked
Death
it up,
Ray
and
is
it's like a guy from Cake or something.
Yeah, it's like 2 guys from Cake that like left after the first album.
Yeah, not a fan. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's jarring to like have some good Paul songs and then this. I don't know.
Yeah.
bouncy poppy song.
Oh, I did find out that I Belong, the piano ballad, that was co-written. That's co-written with Ramin Djawadi, the guy who scored the movie.
Oh, okay, cool.
And then I believe Pete Yorn does a cover of that at the end. I think I saw on a Paul Westerberg fan site, I think it was paulwesterberg.net, that they were actually pushing the soundtrack pretty hard. Like, I think they had some sort of flyer from, for your consideration, I Belong for best song. Like, I think they were trying to push it for like award season, like Golden Globes and Oscar consideration.
I don't know what I was thinking with this soundtrack. I guess I was kind of hopeful that it would lead to more produced albums after this, even though I loved the 49 minutes and the 505 kind of guided by voices production vibes on those. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised this didn't lead to more, higher level production Paul albums with songs not tangentially about bears. So
yeah, I think the I Don't Cares album is probably the closest as far as like him trying to make a proper album, and with a band name like the I Don't Cares, he's clearly not trying to make a lot of money on it.
Yeah, he recycled a few songs on that one, but it's a very solid album with his girlfriend. I don't know if it's still his girlfriend, but who's obviously super talented in her own right. Yeah, I really like that album. I feel like the time between the albums is farther between now, so I get excited when something new comes out, but I'm also like, I wish he would release something every 2 years or a year, but it seems like he's slowing down on output.
Yeah, because during his indie days with Vagrant, Mono, Stereo, Come Feel Me Tremble, and Folker, like I felt like they came out like really quickly. So I know that Open Season came out before you had kids. Would something like a soundtrack done by Paul Westerberg for like another children's movie, like, does that move the needle for you as a parent?
Does it move the needle for me to see the movie?
Or, yeah, if a new animated film came out, and I mean, obviously Paul's one of your favorites, but like when Hollywood cooks up something like this, does it help you as a parent stomach having to see this movie?
No doubt. I kind of feel like a lot of kids soundtracks now are like, I mean, my kids like the Trolls movies, and they're just cover songs. I mean, I don't hate those movies, but it's hard because I think it's hard to do original soundtracks now because just commercialism, and they're trying to pander to, it's easier to sell cover songs. Maybe it's the whole Glee thing and, rehashing, famous songs from the 70s, 80s, 90s and nostalgia and all that. But I think it seems to be hard to sell like a real singer-songwriter soundtrack anymore. Because I can't remember the last really good one that I heard, especially for a kids movie. I think Paul commented on that, not bitterly. He just said something like, they ended up just putting an orchestral score over Open Season, and it just, he said, the guy who scored it, you mentioned, beat him out. But I just think it's just the nature of rock pop music. You just can't coordinate a Paul Westerberg song with a dancing bear for more than a certain amount of time and have it work,
So Paul gets commissioned to write these songs for Open Season in 2006. And I think that's important because this is after what I believe Josh Freese would call Paul's trying to be a professional musician phase.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a surprise, right? Like he had gone to an indie label. He was doing albums there, basically just out of his basement at that point.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he's playing a movie premiere in LA with Tommy and Josh Freese.
Yeah. There's it's so weird, the production ups and downs his solo careers had from, it was like up here maybe with 14 songs, and then eventually it was a little more lo-fi. And then, well, the third one was like Don Was, but I don't know. That was kind of it kind of felt like it sloped down to mono, where it was like in his basement, and then, then we're back to like real production on this. So.
Yeah, I mean, even when he was promoting mono, like there's that Letterman performance where he's dressed as Grandpa Boy with like the mittens on his coat, and
yeah, I think like mono is probably my favorite. It could be my favorite solo album. It's just like very Keith Richards and very back to the basics. I mean, guitar and drums, but yeah, he was on Letterman.
Well, a version of him was on Letterman.
A version of him. Yeah, I think everyone thought he had kind of lost his mind, like going full in on the Grandpa Boy thing. There was like an EP before that, but I liked it. Yeah, it was a version of him. He was playing some version of Paul Westerberg.
Yeah, I just remember it was like him and a drummer.
Yeah. I think the guy's name is Bobby Bland, and he played with Prince. So.
Oh yeah. I'm familiar with him. He's
like a Minneapolis staple. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he plays with Soul Asylum
big guy.
now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he has. Yeah. I love that performance.
Yeah, it's so memorable. But it's also like, wait, does he have
like
mittens pinned to his coat?
Hanging. Yeah, mittens, not gloves. Yeah.
So I believe it was a few months before the open season soundtrack came out. They also came out with that Replacements Best Of with a couple of brand new songs.
Is that the one with Come On, Come On, Come On?
Or it's the one with Message to the Boys and Pool and Dive.
Message to the Boys. Okay. No, Come On, Come On, Come On was in like a Besterberg or Resterberg, one of those compilations.
Those are both actual albums, not.
Yeah. Message to the Boys was technically a replacement song with Tommy, I believe. Right?
I think Paul's on the lead, but it's a song about Tommy.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think Chris Mars sings backup vocals on Pool and Dive.
Pool and Dive. Oh, Pool and Dive. Yeah. Yeah. Pool and Dive, Message to the Boys. Yeah. Those are great.
But I think with those songs,
of the reunion.
Yeah. I think those songs plus these open season songs got us Replacements fans into a fervor that a reunion was imminent.
It's going to happen. Yeah.
But I think shortly, was it a year after that when Paul drove the screwdriver through his hand in his basement?
Yeah, that sounds right. I remember being bummed because I got into Paul, and I guess I knew who Paul was in high school when I was 16, so that was like 92. But my first Replacements album was Let It Be when I was 18. My first exposure to Paul Westerberg was probably like Dyslexic Heart, or, what was the song in the Friends soundtrack? Was that Stain Your Blood? Maybe I ran into Stain Your Blood later.
Did they make a video for Sunshine? I think Sunshine.
Oh yeah, Sunshine. Yeah.
But which is a cover, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a cover. What was that in? Was that
Friends. That was on the Friends
soundtrack as well? that's like a 70s pop song, right?
Yeah.
I think Paul is very comfortable with 70s pop, you know? I kind of feel like the replacements were kind of like if like new wave never existed, you know? I mean, obviously there's punk influence and very much Instinct, but even Sorry Ma is kind of like 1950s rock played twice as fast, or garage rock less than it is punk, you know? It's just like, I think Paul's got one foot in the past always, in a good way. But I never got to see him solo. I got to see him on the Mono Stereo tour, and one show after that, and an in-store. But yeah, I remember when he put the screwdriver through his hand, I was like sad because it sounded like I might not get to see him for a few years.
Yeah. And it just seemed like such a replacement sort of self-sabotage thing to do.
Yeah.
Not that he did it on purpose, but, you know, just the timing
Right,
of
right.
everything. Like, you know, he's
Yeah.
kind of picked himself back up. He did the soundtrack. They're doing all these reissues, and then screwdriver through the hand.
Yeah. And how long was he? Do you remember how long he was like sidelined by that?
I don't know exactly how long he was sidelined, but he didn't do anything between open season until he did that 4049, right? That 4049
Yeah.
thing for Amazon.
No, right.
So they don't reunite till 2012.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And then they started playing shows in 2013, right?
That sounds right. Yeah, I looked it up. I saw him in 2013. Yeah, Shaky Knees Fest. But yeah, so that was like what then? Does that make it 6 years in the making, or
Yeah, 6 years.
took a while? And they did songs for the Slim Dunlap. Well, they did like 4 cover songs for that Slim Dunlap tribute album, or fundraising album, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Songs for Slim, and those were covers though.
Yeah, those were all covers. One was a Chris Mars solo song too. Or Chris Mars did it all by himself. It wasn't the replacements.
Oh, yeah. He did the art for the album.
Yeah, but he was like, no more replacement stuff for me.
Yeah. And I was reading about the reunion, and Paul wanted Chris to be on. I don't know if there's any bad blood between them or before or not. He didn't play much on All Shook Down, I think, which is, you know, I love that record. It's basically a Paul record, not a replacements record. It was All Shook Down? It was basically a little bit of Tommy, but it wasn't really a band record, right?
Right. It was a bunch of like session musicians.
Yeah. He wanted Chris Mars on the reunion tour, but Chris Mars turned him down. And supposedly Paul was bummed about that because he wanted, you know, as full a band reunion as possible.
So we worked together in like 2011-ish, right? I think that's
yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
So it bummed me out that like you moved and then the replacements got back together.
Yeah. 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 I know we like texted each other about it or something. Yeah, that wasn't great timing. Did you go with any of our people we went to gigs with, Jessica, or, you know, anyone like that?
Yeah, I went to every replacements show with Jessica, and I know that she went to even more without me.
Yeah, good for her.
Yeah, I think she did.
Hardcore.
I think she did Riot Fest Chicago. I think the first one was Toronto, right? It was Toronto, Chicago, Denver.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So I think she did Chicago, and then she and I went to Denver, and that was a lot of fun. And then you saw them at the Shaky Knees.
I saw them at Shaky Knees, and you know, it was like your typical 3-day festival. There were a few other bands I wanted to see, but I didn't want to pay whatever all 3 days, and I had little kids, so I got a 1-day ticket, and someone I talked to on the alt country board was going. He lives in Tennessee, so we met up, and he's a huge Replacements fan. So we met up and had a beer before, and it was just like them and Modest Mouse. And I think I tried. I don't remember if Modest Mouse was before or after, but I think I tried to see if half a set of Modest Mouse, but it was pouring. It was a great show, but we were just like, the whole mission was to like go as close to the stage as possible. So that's what we were there for. And we did okay for a festival.
Yeah.
What was your favorite show?
I mean, it's hard to not say the St. Paul show because, it's being back in Minnesota with them. I was on the rail for Riot Fest Denver, so that is also pretty special to me. And it was my first time seeing them on the reunion, and I think the first time's always kind of the most special because, like, you don't know what to expect. I also got the really sloppy encore in Denver, which was fun. They started with Hootenanny with Paul playing the drums.
Yeah.
And they didn't finish that, and then they, like, couldn't finish anything else. And then Paul just took his mic, disconnected it, and chucked it into the crowd and walked off stage. Which I felt like was as Replacements of an encore as you can get. Like they fell apart in spectacular fashion.
Right. Yeah, my show had Billy Joe from Green Day, which I don't hate Green Day, but I was kind of like, why does the Green Day have to be here? But he's great. He wasn't like, he probably got a shout out at the end, but I don't think half the people knew who he was. He was just a guitar player in the band. So it was, I felt like it was a full-on Replacement show. I mean, obviously I love Slim Dunlap, but he was unable to be there because of health conditions. But Tommy, I mean, it was the Tommy and Paul show. So they did switch instruments. I don't remember if it was on Hootenanny or not. That's probably the only thing that would have made sense. But I mean, it was good, sloppy fun. I mean, I was very satisfied. I'm trying to look up their playlist from when I saw them. They started out with Taking a Ride, which was I was in heaven for that. And then Love You Till Friday, and then third song was Maybelline. Actually, I don't see anything on here. I don't recognize it. I think they did a false start on some sort of blues song, which is not on this list, but
Yeah, I think Love You Till Friday and Maybelline, they would like jump back and forth between the two songs.
Yeah. They did Judy is a Punk Ramones cover, obviously.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, they would not cover anything that was made before like 1980.
No. They ended on IOU, which I remember very well. Mm-hmm. They did Customer before that. Yeah, I mean, the set list was, I don't know how many people know Customer, who were in the crowd, except for old people like me. So they definitely didn't just like try to play like their top 15 recognizable songs, which I appreciate.
Right. Yeah, they kept the set list pretty varied. Like I think they played like I Will Dare at every show and, Kiss Me on the Bus, but I think they were pretty good at switching things up. Like I only saw Hootenanny, I think, at the Denver show. In Minneapolis, he did, or in St. Paul. In St. Paul, he did Skyway. We got Unsatisfied there as well.
He definitely put his like heart and soul into it. Like he was. I know there was something about how they didn't do the sound check a couple of the shows, and they were kind of half-assing it. But I mean, all was like in top form.
I remember at the St. Paul show, they did play Love You in the Fall from the open season soundtrack.
They did?
Yeah.
Really?
And like nobody...
I would have remembered that if they had done that.
and nobody
Yeah.
around me knew what song it was.
Right.
Everyone was confused.
Right.
And I remember distinctly there was this girl, and for some reason I knew she was from Buffalo. And she was like, "It's from the Open Season soundtrack, you idiots."
Yeah, I kind of wish I hadn't seen him at a festival, because you know what a festival's like. You get like, it's mostly only people who are 23 can endure a summer festival. And a lot of them are there to see other bands. So I kind of felt like half the crowd was not necessarily there to see the Replacements. They just, heard they were cool, which is great and all, but it wasn't like a tight group of people who were all probably roughly my age or older. There wasn't like a camaraderie of seeing them at like one of the smaller, or not smaller, but medium-sized clubs in Atlanta. But that was their only appearance in Atlanta, so had to take what I got.
Well, what's funny is that Riot Fest, it's kind of this punk rock festival.
Yeah.
So they were headlining the night that we went to, and the band before them was AFI.
Mm-hmm.
So we were maybe like 5-10 rows back when AFI started, and then the second AFI finished, all their fans just left.
Yeah.
And then the rail was free for all the Replacements fans.
Nice. Do you think there will be another reunion, or you think that's it?
I don't want to sound cynical, but I think it'll be only if Paul needs the money.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's kind of
that's
over
fine,
it.
Though.
I think he's just kind of over it.
Yeah.
He was doing that T-shirt thing at the end of the tour.
The T-shirt
like,
thing.
I will not whore my past or whatever.
Yeah. That's
so I don't think he wants to do it again, but I don't think it's. I think it's still possible it will happen.
He was. He had a T-shirt on the Atlanta show, if I remember right, and I don't remember what letter it was, but I think that was like early enough where no one had figured it out what he was trying to say. But whoring my past is such a Paul thing.
Yeah, the self-hatred with him is pretty strong.
Yeah. Did you see any of those shows around whatever Stereo Mono, Come Feel Me Tremble era, where it was just Paul and like guitar?
No, I've only seen video clips.
Yeah, I think it's the second show I went to, where the one where he would like call fans up on the stage and sit on the couch with them, which I don't know. I think I would have felt like really self-conscious doing that, but in retrospect, like, how freaking cool would that have been to have done that? Because all you had to do was be in the front row and basically raise your hand or just jump on stage. Like, he didn't care. I'm sure he tried to keep like a male-female balance, so it wasn't like a sausage fest or anything. But it was cool, because I remember being in the standing room space in front of the stage and people jumping up there. So those were really cool shows. I don't remember if you signed autographs after. I've seen in shows with Jay Mascis where he does, and those were, I don't know if they were really awkward, but it felt awkward just because it's Jay. And
right.
I don't think I did anything weird, but it felt weird. He just kind of looked at me, and I'm like, thanks, man. And he just kind of gave me a blank stare, and it's just how he is. It wasn't like,
Yeah, I've heard Lou Barlow
interviews
where
you've seen him in interviews. It's like, there's always a weird tension of silence. It was such a Jay Mascis record signing. It was perfect. It was cool.
I can't imagine anyone having a normal interaction with him.
No. But I love his interviews. I mean, not to sidetrack this conversation, but yeah, I think Paul and I would say three of my favorite musicians we probably share in common, like Paul and Malkmus and Jay. They always give great interviews. I've never read a Paul interview where I'm like, oh, this is boring, whatever. Like he always kind of reveals something new in every interview. It's probably because I'm a super fan, but he's a poet. Like he says witty, funny things, and
right.
he's got a dry Midwestern sense of humor that I appreciate. So,
and he knows when he knows certain things, people are going to totally run with it. Like he is strategic with what he says.
Yeah. No, you're from Minneapolis, right?
Yeah, I'm from the suburbs of Minneapolis.
Did you? I think it's on SoundCloud or somewhere. Someone interviewed him about the death of Prince, and it was pretty touching. He was saying he looked up to Prince, and Prince was like, Beethoven to him, and he's like, I can't even compare what we did, when we were kids. They recorded at Paisley Park. I can't remember what album, but he was.
Don't tell a soul.
He was basically in awe of Prince. It seems like the two great Minneapolis icons, one commenting on the other.
Yeah, I saw a couple really nice interviews he did regarding Prince's death. One of them was just a quick little anecdote where he said that he saw Prince. I would assume it's at First Avenue. He said he saw him in the bathroom, and he just said, "What's up?" to Prince, and Prince just said, "Life," and then walked away.
That's funny.
But then he told another story about recording at Paisley Park, and I think this is, and he didn't say it by name, say the person by name, but I assume he's talking about Bob. But he said that,
right.
He said a friend had passed away in the middle of the recording session. And when they came back to the studio, Prince had just filled the studio with balloons. Like the whole studio was just covered in balloons.
Well, I think he said when Prince died, he said there was just silence in the neighborhood. It was poetic. And he didn't know what to do, Paul. And so he's like, I went out and I bought some really, I think these were his words, really colorful clothes, which I'm sure they were great. I would like to see what he bought. Because he's a snappy dresser in his own way. Sometimes with duct tape and stuff, like the Come Feel Me Tremble tour. But
Right.
yeah, he said he went out and bought colorful clothes to honor Prince, and he's like, I didn't know what else to do, but he said, I thought Prince would have liked that. So I thought that was pretty cool.
After the St. Paul show, the day after, I proposed to Eunice.
Nice.
That's why we were there.
Did she go with you?
So yeah, she went with me to the Replacement show. So that was kind of the reason for going out there in the first place.
Was she a fan at all before you guys got together? Or? No. Did she come around, or is she just like, I appreciate some of this? Or
yeah, I think she appreciates it. She'll, she can now, pick out replacement songs like on a playlist, like, oh, it's a replacement song.
Yeah.
Oh, this sounds like Paul Westerberg, but she wouldn't go out of her way to listen to it.
Right.
But, I was like, oh, replacements are reuniting in, the Twin Cities. And then she goes, so are we going? And then I was like, oh, interesting. You want to go? And then,
yeah.
And then I started scheming. I was like, well, we're going to be there anyways. Let's see if I can make things work for this other big moment in my life.
Right.
Let's couple them together. So,
but she understood what it meant to you and all that. So
Yeah. So she's like, "Are we going?" And she's like, "I've never been to the Twin Cities. It'll be fun." I was like, "Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me make it very memorable for you." Well, thanks, Christian, for coming on the podcast. It was great catching up with
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah.
If you're in the
Good to catch
Atlanta,
up.
if you're in the Georgia area and you need a ad agency to represent you, you can look up the Mighty Roar. That's mightyroar.com. And Christian will be more than happy to help you out.
Thanks for the plug.
You're welcome. Let's keep in touch. Let's do this again soon.
Yeah, definitely. It's been fun.
Thanks for joining us this week on Soundtrack Your Life. Make sure to visit our website, soundtrackyourlife.net, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too.